So welcome to the Node Next 10 meeting for March 16th, 2022. We will follow our standard approach of going through the agenda that was posted in the repo. It was posted as issue number 122. I'm just going to put in, I'm just going to put in the link to the minutes. If people could add themselves in, that would be great. Add that to the chat. Where's the chat? Okay, so first of all, does anybody have any announcements that they'd like to make? Okay. Sorry, I'm just taking notes as I go along. I don't think so. There's no announcements this week. Okay, let's go and look at the issues which are tagged for the agenda. The first one is identifying next mini summit topics. I think that one I did take a quick look at, and we've discussed what they are. They're documented. What we need to do is open the issue. And I think we had a volunteer. So Jean is going to open that issue, and we'll work to get that opened by the end of this week so that we can start promoting and inviting people and stuff like that. So unless anybody else has something, I don't think there's too much to chat about on that one. Okay. So the next one is the OpenJS Summit World 2022. That one, I know we had a good discussion last time as well. I think we've got a pretty good idea of some of the things we'd submit. Joe, I know you've been talking a little bit to the organizers, so that seems to be progressing. But I'm not sure, are we ready to start submitting topics yet, or is that still a little bit out? Oh, you're on mute.
There we go. So we're talking about the Collab Summit, is that right?
That is, yeah.
So I think that it would be great if there was a little bit more instruction in the issue, but I don't think that should hold us back. I think that they are ready for people to start, suggesting sessions.
Okay. So I guess then our question is, we have in that issue a number of sessions we wanted to, let's see. Right, we've documented a number of sessions, so it's really a matter of like who from our team is going to go and propose those.
So I'm pulling up the issue here. So are these ideas things that we think, like, I guess my question is, do we need to get interest gauged on all of these ideas, or do we just propose them and then see what happens, and then nobody?
I think I think we just propose them. Like, these are the ones this team we think would be useful. Like the common session, like maybe I'll volunteer to submit that one. And then, like the technical deep dives, the ESM and observability, like that's another session, which is just like our, would be like our mini summit, just we'll do it in person, right? Because we thought those were, good topics to do in person. So we could just actually look at our previous mini summit outlines and use that as a submission outline. I guess the question we do have is like, that was good comments. I don't think that those would, Do we see those all as separate sessions, or do we have a couple of those that we would group together? The technical deep dives, I guess, is a session all on its own.
Well, would each of those be a session, an ESM session, an observability session, and even modern HTTP session? Those
I
seem
think
like.
that. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say they seem like separate sessions. Go ahead.
I think they would, but I don't know. Have we? Like, would we propose 5 different sessions, or like 1 2-hour session where we cover a couple things? It's a good question.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we could have like maybe a technical deep dive afternoon or something and split it up as we see fit.
Yeah.
And
I think that might make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because sometimes you just don't know how long you're going to spend on a conversation. But if we just had a whole afternoon and we could take breaks, work.
Yeah.
It seems like the baseline review and the common session could be one, perhaps.
I think though the common session was meant to be a shorter like presentation to everybody if there's like that common track the first morning.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm thinking similar to the afternoon session is like, they might be separate, but they're sort of like one could very easily go into the next one.
Right. I'm just thinking like the common one might be like 5 past ones. It's been like 5 or 6 in a row.
Oh, Gina's in the waiting room.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Jean.
Oh, I tried. Okay. Yeah. Should be being promoted now.
Hi, how are you?
Hello.
How you doing?
Sorry, I'm a bit late.
It's all good. So yeah, Michael, do you want to propose the common and the baseline review, and I'll just throw in the deep dives?
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
And then we can sort of, if we paste them into the issue, then we can all sort of contribute to them as well and stuff. So that's good. Okay. So that's good on that one. Creating the communication channels to the periodicals. That one, I think I think we discussed a little bit before. Let's put that to the end and we can sort of look back because we're going to spend a bit of time brainstorming there. The next one was suitable types mini summit deep dive next steps. From what I understand, it's actually Tierney is having a meeting with Rich to talk about like incremental changes to the docs to support the types changes. So I think that's the next step. And I'm not sure there's too much else to talk about on that one. Incremental. The other one under that I haven't opened an issue, but I think will be interesting, which was like to mention at least, which is Summit next steps, single binary or single executable application support. I did open an issue, so let me just, or a PR actually to, I will just add that in there for awareness if people want to take a look too. Sorry, I'm just navigating to it. So I'll paste it here in the chat and I'll put it in the minutes. It's basically a PR which tries to start to document what we discussed in terms of single executable application support, as well as I did some proof of concept. So like on Linux, it actually is a working proof of concept of being able to bundle in something and have it run some JavaScript along the lines of what we discussed. So I found it interesting that at least on Linux, it was possible to make it work. There are some good comments already in the PR there. So I'm going to make a few changes along with those, and there's some good issues and stuff. But if we're at the mini summit, it's worth taking a look and commenting there. And but that's kind of some forward progress on that front. So then I think the last issue we had on the agenda was the communications channel. So I know, Joe, you'd reached out to I guess one of the groups that regularly publishes work like, what do you call them? Newsletters.
Yeah.
Right. And they sounded interested in like the project providing some topics of interest, right?
Yes.
So the question then is like, what is a good way for us to easily feed that info to them? Like the kind of things in my mind that are key is, one, have a place we can tell those groups to say, like, here's where we'll put info, or here's where we'll send info, if that we think would be good for newsletters, and which we'd like to go out in newsletters, and have them watching and receiving that. And then the flip side is like, how do we let team members from the project actually send things to that, right? And hopefully with little overhead and no middleman if possible, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. We had talked before we went live about using maybe a repo, which I think would make sense for us as collaborators and coders. But I have a feeling on the PR and marketing comm side, that's less a thing that they have kind of integrated in their daily routines. I'm wondering if we can leverage the foundation in some way, and maybe it still is in even a repo, like say in the cross project council, or I mean in the OpenJS Foundation org, we have a repo for like PR marketing, and if Alex, maybe even in the README, we have some of the outlets that we would want to. I mean, maybe it would be different for different projects, but I'm even trying to think about like cross project pipeline sort of stuff. If we could rely on the foundation to help us conduit these to
Right.
publications, weeklies, what have you, then maybe that would work.
Yeah, the only question is like, are the newsletters going to be JavaScript wide, or are they going to be project specific, or?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, maybe we should just focus on what we think we need, and then, can see from there.
Yeah, expand it out if it seems generic.
Yeah. So what are we thinking that we want to get out there? Are we talking about security releases, all releases, any surveys, or, kind of all of these things? Is that what we're?
I think it's like right now, if we pick any one of those newsletters, there'll be some interesting topics, but they're sort of picked up ad hoc. And I think, Bradley, you were thinking like, say for the next 10, it might, it would be a way to say we want, say we had a survey. Yeah, we'd want to say like, hey, there's a survey going out. Please get your, it's awareness beyond just like Twitter or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there are definitely different crowds that people might not be aware of, especially if they are Twitter heavy in communication. Like the YouTube side of JavaScript is an example of a completely isolated crowd that is actually fairly heavy. So there are tens of thousands of developers that just use YouTube basically for their JavaScript news and other stuff.
What can you because I am familiar. What does that look like? And how do you think that we would get integrated? Like, what would be an example? of what
I
we could
don't
do?
think we have a good way to integrate with YouTube, but the idea is to at least get into newsletters as well, which are also a thing.
Yeah.
So this is interesting because we even have core collaborators who aren't in these spheres. So Antoine Duhamel, I'm going to butcher his name, sorry. He doesn't have social media, for example, which
Right.
I think would be great if I could move to that kind of model as well.
Yeah.
But at least branching out for newsletters and stuff seems reasonable. For a few of the other ones, like people who are only going through courses like Egghead, or they're going through more technical blogs and YouTube, I don't think that's really going to be a target audience for us. I don't know how we could integrate with how they do things. Like, you don't want people who already have sponsors to have extra call outs and things like that.
I guess it's, yeah, like you're talking about sort of YouTube shows almost, because we already have,
That's what they do.
we stream all these meetings. And so anybody who wants to keep up through YouTube on the meetings can easily do that.
If they wanted to watch a full meeting, yes.
Yeah, exactly. So what you're
these are like little clips.
right.
Yeah. I mean, so I feel like this conversation is really.
I don't think we fit into that model of clips.
Yeah, but I mean, we could, but I feel like this is a very, this conversation could be its own mini summit. And lots of things come to mind. I mean, I could imagine, we could ask the foundation to, like, do a weekly kind of, summary of any sort of notable things for any of the projects. And there probably might only be 5 minutes, but it would be something that people could glom onto in what you're describing, Bradley. But I'll also say really quickly, this makes me wonder if we should be doing more, I don't want to say blogging, but if we had a place where people could PR in, short updates and announcements and things to call out, it might not be bad to be considering that still for the website.
I know we got rid of that, was it last year to some extent?
Yeah, the news, the blog section on the website is primarily just releases and the occasional kind of thing. But it's something I've been asking about for years, especially as we were working on the website redesign stuff, and not really using Medium anymore. Like, I mean, that could just, what I'm thinking is that could be a pipeline for people. It's just,
yeah, we're just trying to open up pipelines because, in particular, like, we release something, and then in particular social media gets a hold of it, or the orange site gets a hold of it, and it's just chaos. Having people able to participate generally alleviates that somewhat, or feeling that they know something is coming in the pipeline. Like, the HTTP imports PR was open for over a year, and there were multiple like avenues where it was talked about, and it still just got heavy blowback. Like, people didn't know it was in progress or anything, and I didn't know how to make it more visible.
Yeah,
I think you good overall point. Maybe let's like the
they don't know
newsletter
what's
seemed like
coming until it's already in there.
right. Like, I think the newsletters are a very good concrete one. So if we could figure that one out, that's, I think, a good thing to, like, what are we actually going to do there? And then we could loop back to the other ones. Because I think, like Joe said, we could spend quite a bit of time talking about all of those, right?
Yeah, and I think it would be interesting to document the problems that we're trying to solve specifically, so that we know we're not spinning our wheels that wouldn't solve them. But because I think if I understand you correctly, Bradley, I think one of your main concerns is changes in Node.js that, you know, the collaborators know, the people who are deep into the project know, but the wider, you know, community isn't aware. So how do we surface those potential changes, those conversations earlier in the process so that people can get engaged and not be blindsided?
Yep. And these are people who don't want to participate usually.
Yeah, which I can understand, but it would be good if they were aware, right? Is that,
Yes.
I think that's your sentiment, yeah.
Knowing it's coming generally makes the people who are going to complain show up before they freak out.
Yeah. I mean, you know, as silly as it, I don't know. I'm wondering if there should be like some sort of like comms, you know, GitHub team. And when anyone thinks like, oh, this conversation should be surfaced, you know, tag the comms team and say, hey, can we get this, you know, out there? And then that comms team would know to, you know, get the foundation to help us put together something, or just tweet about it, or you know, send it out to the weeklies.
We have some automation already with the Node Twitter stuff, and we also have the now available GitHub Actions stuff. Maybe, like you're saying, we don't need the comms team to do it exactly. They could just triage on a weekly basis, and just we could tag stuff, and
Yep.
the week gets tagged, it gets added to somewhere.
Yep.
And then usually I would guess it would just be like a dump of what's going on.
Mhm.
You mean like tag an existing issue?
Yeah. And be like, this PR is getting close to landing, or whatever. And just some instruction on when you add the tag, you've got to do something.
Yeah, because I would expect that, like, certainly, like, say the newsletter probably wants more than just like, here's a million comment issue.
No,
Yeah.
The paragraph outline.
This sounds like a discussion we've had quite a lot in the release group, where things do get tagged notable changes, but we really need to crowdsource what people want to write, because the people who know what to articulate about that particular change are probably the ones who wrote it or heavily reviewed it.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the Slack integration stuff is good for the social team, for Tierney and me, you know, and by that, I mean, it's nice that the release team can tag us and we can just jump in and retweet or what have you. So whatever we think would work would be good to have. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the best path is, but I think some context would need to be in a comment so that the people who do promote it would be able to quickly grab that and surface it.
I think the big thing, the big problem with notable changes that was just brought up is there is a lack of explanation. Like, if marking something with a label, either one of these, notable change or, I don't know, needs comms, whatever the other label is.
Yeah.
If either of them happen, I mean, if you open up an issue and say it's going to close, if you don't comment on it, at least that makes people know that, hey, I tagged the issue, I have to comment on it. So say I were to tag something, the bot sees I added it, and they open up an issue on wherever, the releasers maybe have their own little area for it. And then that just puts my GitHub username and it's like, please describe in a paragraph what you wanted. Otherwise, it's going to be lost. Because I do know some people have added those tags thinking that they'll just magically get filled out.
Yep, that's it. And yeah, we've toyed with the idea before, just having a bot say, hey, this has been tagged with notable changes. Can anyone just post this comment or edit this comment with what you want to be reflected in a change log? It might be nothing. Or it might be, hey, I'm going to write a paragraph. But It's still a crowdsourcing problem, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this at least puts it, whoever adds the tag
Yeah.
would get
It-
mentioned.
Yeah.
They're already active. We know they're interacting somehow.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's a tangible thing we could do and try out.
Yeah, and I can see it being in the PR issue itself. The tooling is there. You add the label, you know, whether an issue, not a comment pops up with the person who added the labels tagged, saying please describe, you know, what's notable here, and then maybe even have some tooling within. I keep thinking of Slack because I don't have a good handle on my GitHub messages yet. But if there was like a tooling thing where a weekly digest comes in to, like, you know, some sort of comms channel, we could click through to each one, you know, grab the summary and surface them, you know, into the pipeline, whatever that means.
Yeah, that would be good. Because that would give newsletters, releasers, whoever, something they can pick and choose what they want to put.
Yeah.
Because it might be that they want to skip a week for one issue for whatever reason or stuff like that. No.
Yeah.
You know, one of the questions is like, okay, if we get the info, how do we get it to these groups then? Because you're saying like having it in a GitHub repo isn't necessarily make sense.
Well, it depends. If all the comments are inline in a PR, it definitely doesn't make sense. If it's like a separate thing that that newsletters could triage themselves and stuff, maybe it makes sense, and then we could just ping them if there's an important thing.
Like if there was an emailing list that once a week it sent a
Yeah, you could do
document
an
that had
email.
links to all the issues, like here are the active news issues.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like if we set it up in such a way, you know, whether it's Tierney and me, although I hesitate to volunteer for too much more stuff, but or you know, someone at the foundation, if they could quickly scan a Slack channel or know how to pull up, you know, an org with all the issues tagged a certain way and know that the summary is going to be in there, they might be able to do some of that legwork and then throw out an email or some sort of push to whatever organizations. Like, I think if we minimize friction and you know, there'll probably need to be a little bit of work, but as long as we minimize friction as much as possible, that's doable.
I mean, the simplest, it's great to say, okay, let's just have a tag that then mentions people and whatever, but the simplest one would be like, if somebody's already adding the tag, if today they could just go open an issue in a repo and put the content of summary of what they want, we're not really asking them any more than saying, put this tag on the existing issue, right? And I'm just thinking that doesn't require any work on the automation front, because you could end up with then a repo that has some small number of like, here's things, here's news, which we would be, you know, would make sense to feed to the groups.
It might be interesting to talk to, you know, Robin and Alex and Jory about this to see, because we're kind of maybe guessing as what we think they would find help.
Yeah. Just FYI, there was similar discussions yesterday. They've started I don't know if it's weekly or every 2 weeks, marketing public meeting for OpenJS. I sat in on it, and some of these discussions came up around where they should be surfacing updates for Node in particular. Should they be on the OpenJS website? So I think this all kind of links together.
Yeah. Yeah, I was wondering about that meeting. I wasn't able to attend. So they're ready, you know, and I know.
I mean, regardless of what we do with a bot, what was being mentioned about having just the repo would most likely be the output of the bot anyway. So we could just start there.
That's what I'm thinking, right? Like it doesn't, otherwise we're blocked on somebody doing some work where we could say like, here's the news repo. If you want it to go to these people, you open an issue, you provide an outline.
And then you could have a label that automatically creates stuff, but that can be done later.
Right. We can then automate, feeding stuff over as whatever, but actually proving it out, saying, let's add some stuff there and see if we can get it to the newsletters and whatever. Seems like a good first step.
Yeah, it seems reasonable. One thought that comes to mind is, then do we need to train everyone that this is what you do? I mean, I guess regardless, we would need to make people aware no matter what the process is.
Yeah, like the README for the repo would be like, here are the instructions of, you have a piece of news that you want to get out there, you paste it here.
Yeah.
And then what is some explanation of what's going to happen? Well, it could be like, and we will send a summary of this to these newsletters on a weekly basis. The OpenJS staff will review it for publication on the website on a periodic basis. Like, we could then add a list of things that will happen.
It could even be like a template as well, like a issue template that people paste their content and then say, where does it make sense for this to be shared? And it could be Twitter, it could be one of the newsletters that we get the contact mechanism through.
Yeah, no, a template, actually, that makes a lot of sense, just to say like, where would you like to see it get out there?
Yeah. Although I think that should be optional. I think we don't want to ask contributors to be thinking too much about that. But yeah, I think an issue template makes a lot of sense. Okay.
So then is like, so that seems like a, fairly low bar to entry. We now have some issues in a repo. We started off talking about newsletters. How do we get those things into a newsletter? Yeah,
I mean, I think it would probably be good if we just asked the foundation to help us, be that part of the conduit.
Maybe our ask is that they review once a week and forward them on to the newsletters. Is that the sort of summary? That would be like a low overhead, no automation required to. Yeah,
and I agree, Beth. The template, links to the relevant issues and whatnot, and a good summary. And I think the foundation would be amenable to popping into a repo once a week and just pulling out the issues. And then once they do surface them, they close the issue, and it's kind of easy to manage.
And we can see, like, if there's one a month, it's not much work for anybody, right?
Yeah. We have the social team repo, but this seems different than that, right? This should just be its own comms sort of repo.
Or
I guess, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was just thinking, although it is the same remit, I wonder if, is the social team repo just for Twitter at the moment? I wonder if that could just be, like of what that repo's for.
Yeah, ironically, there is a tweet repo so people go to the social team. I don't know if this is what happened to you the other day, Michael, but people go to the social team repo and are like, I don't know what, but you go to the tweet repo to get a tweet out. So something obviously we would need to talk to Tierney about too, but I could go either way really on that.
It could be like, you open an issue in the social team repo with a tag that is news.
Yeah, and we don't, that repo, I believe, is really only there right now for some documentation on what the social team is. And we use the tweet repo for actual, tweeting together, people able to open up PRs and stuff.
I guess I'm writing just notes on the initial solution, like how would newsletters register to be notified?
That's, to me, in this scenario we're describing, that's a little bit manual. Like Alex, for example, they would register their interest with her, and she would have a list somewhere on the other side of the fence. But I mean, people could, watch the repo. People could, do it self-serve. I just don't know if anybody who's doing that sort of work is going to be interested in that.
No, that's fine. I just want the README to basically say, if you're a new newsletter, here's how you get on the list.
Yeah.
And it could be as simple as like email Alex and she'll add you to the list, the mailing list she uses.
Yeah.
It could also be just using GitHub's email based, because I know you can scope those. So,
But I think Joe's comment was GitHub isn't like for the target. GitHub may not be familiar. So it's providing that bridge that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it could be that they still, sign up and manage their digest or whatever. But yeah, I think there are options there. They can do it one way or they can do it the other.
That might argue for a different repo though. If people want to watch a repo for news, they don't necessarily want the other social team stuff, right?
Oh, got it.
But you should be able, well, that's getting too far into GitHub. Yeah, you can filter it by label.
I mean, repos are not costing us anything. So
yeah.
Okay.
just like a news repo maybe is the easiest that way, people can actually register. If you're, GitHub, you can just watch it and get all the things that way. But then as an extra service, we've asked the Foundation comms teams to look once a month and send a summary to an email if that's what you want to sign up for. That seems like a pretty low overhead initial thing, and we can see how effective it is. And
Yeah. Be quiet.
so this is what I wrote in I don't know if people are looking at the minutes, but this is what I wrote in the minutes as a potential initial solution. Just pasted that into the chat for everybody. I'll fix my typos. It's basically a news repo for writing with a template for writing potential news items. We'll ask the Foundation comms teams to review weekly and email on to newsletter contacts. Reviewed, so maybe it's review weekly, generate summary, and email on to newsletter contacts. And it would be like, here's Alex's email if you want to add yourself to that email list.
Yep.
So I guess we'd need to see if the Foundation's up for that. And I guess, confirm that we think that like the newsletters would want to register for something like that.
Cool. I will start that conversation right now.
Okay. Okay, well, I think that's pretty good. And once we get that confirmation, I think it's basically a README with a repo with a README that basically documents this, and then some publicizing to the rest of the collaborators to say, hey, we put this in place.
Yep.
And I suspect the Foundation may also want to, Joe, if you're saying they were looking at putting some stuff on the website and stuff like that, would be a feed for that as well. So.
Yeah. Considering right now we're not using Medium and the blog on the website is really just about releases, I think having other outlets, and I think, just having the Foundation help us with that sort of an outlet on their blog makes sense to me.
Okay, anything else on that one we should talk about?
Not at this time.
Okay. I guess then that we are at the end of the agenda. Does anybody have anything else we should talk about before we close out? If not, thanks for everybody's time, and we will see you all again soon.
Thanks, everybody.
See ya.